All right, a very happy Thursday to everyone out there. I figured we'd do a little bit of a free agency video with contracts now becoming official for a bunch of players that signed on Wednesday. We don't need to go through the trades that became official, the Rudy Gobert trade and to Minnesota, certainly Monty Morris and Will Barton to Washington. Kemba to Detroit. We've talked about those kind of at length before, but those became official on Wednesday when the moratorium was lifted at 12 o'clock. We did get a bunch of, I would say 25, 30 contracts that came through. No need to go through the first round players like Patrick Baldwin, who signed in Golden State. Those are based on where you are picked in the draft. It's a scale. First 2 years are guaranteed. Years 3 and 4 are team options that have to be exercised by October 31. So let's go around the league here. We'll talk Durant and Kyrie kind of on the back end here. There's no need to kind of hammer away with that right now. But so Aaron Holiday in Atlanta signs for the veteran minimum exception. So how the veteran minimum works is that from a team standpoint, it's a $1.836 million cap hit. However, Holiday's got 4 years of service. His salary is $1.968. So basically what happens is that Holiday gets that amount. The team gets a $1.83 million cap hit. The Hawks will get reimbursed the difference, about $150,000 from the NBA. So that's how veteran minimums work. So when you hear a player signs for Goran Dragic, for example, signs for 1 year, $2.9 million, that's based on 10 years of service. He gets 2.9. Chicago gets a $1.8 million cap hit. There's an incentive to keep players, veteran players in this league, and those are the rules, how the league has implemented that. So that's how the veteran minimum exception. The only difference is if a guy signs let's say if Aaron Holiday had signed a 2-year contract, you don't get the cap, you don't get the salary relief. So basically from a cap standpoint, it comes in at the 4 years of service, 1.968. The following year would be at 2.2. So instead of getting that $150,000 buffer, you get charged the full amount, which is the 4 years of service. But Holiday's on a 1-year deal. Brooklyn, Kessler Edwards, 1719 team option in year 2. Patty Mills and Nick Claxton have not come through yet, probably today or tomorrow. Brooklyn got a little bit of a set-off, and we'll talk about Javon Carter. The Nets had owed Javon Carter $3.9 million when they waived him. They got a set-off because Carter signed for $2.1 million. It's a complicated formula in Milwaukee he signed. So basically, you take that number that he received in Milwaukee, 2.1, you minus the for a player that has 1 year of service, so it's 1.6. So the difference, which is like 400,000, you multiply by 50,000, and that's your base by 50%, and that's your set off there. So long story short, the Nets got a set off. It's going to save them about $1 million when it looks at Javon Carter. The Martin brothers, Cody Martin's first year salary starts at $7 million. It is non-guaranteed. Last year is $8.7 million. There's a trigger date there. Good value contract. Both players are good players here. So that is a starting salary of $7 million. Last year is non-guaranteed. We will see what happens with Miles Bridges. That qualifying offer of 7.2 is still sitting there. Teams have until the 13th of July to pull it without the player's permission. After that, then the player has to consent to that. I would say I would leave if I was Charlotte, I would leave the qualifying offer. At the end of the day, if Miles Bridges is signing it and this legal situation plays out and not in his favor, he will be suspended. He will be suspended for a very long time, and that money he will probably not see, that $7.2 million. So we'll see how the legal situation plays out. I saw the pictures. I heard the video. It's probably one of the worst things I've seen in a long time, okay? And I will just say this, all right? Innocent to proven guilty. I get it, where we live and stuff like that. But if Miles Bridges is convicted, and this is everything but we've seen is true, pictures, what he did, I don't think we'll ever see him play an NBA game ever again. I really don't. I think he'll be radioactive, and I don't think a team would touch him. And I get it. Everybody deserves a second chance, but It was those pictures were horrifying, to say the least here. So we'll see how that all plays out. But July 13th is the deadline for Charlotte to pull the QO on him. He would become an unrestricted free agent. I would say the likelihood is that the QO stays, and we'll just let the legal system play out here as far as what's going to happen with him. Chicago, Andre Drummond, 2 years, $6.8 million. They use a little bit of their mid-level, 3.2 in the first year, player option 3.6. Chicago has about 7.1 left of the mid-level. Derek Jones, 3.2, 3.3, player option in year 2. Not a Bird exception. He was on their roster for 3 years. Basically, he was traded from Chicago. From Portland. Bird carries over. They're about 1.7 under luxury tax, 15 players under contract. Nothing in Cleveland, but keep an eye on Colin Sexton. The Cavaliers are only $13.1 million under the luxury tax here. A little bit flexibility on the Lamar Stevens non-guaranteed contract. If I was Colin Sexton, I would sign a deal for 2 years, $26 million, and see if I can get a player option and get me into free agency next year. I think that's what I would do, and what it would do would it allow the Cavaliers to possibly trade him. However, because he would sign a 2-year deal, and if there's a player option, he would have the 1-year Bird clause. Basically, it's kind of veto power. Bird rights do not carry over to that new team. So maybe you do 2 years for 26. Maybe you put some bonuses in there, and you kind of go from there as far as what his next contract. I would not advise to sign the qualifying offer. We've seen a bad track record of history. Basically, Greg Monroe is the only player that it's worked out for in that regards. Nerlens Noel, Rodney Hood, those guys are still chasing money. As Mark Stein had reported, the JaVale McGee contract came in at a little bit lower, and what that did was it gave Dallas about $1 million to use on Jaden Hardy, which is his minimum exception for a player of 0 years of service. The likelihood it's probably 1.0, 1.72. That's the most you can get on the remaining portion of the tax mid-level. McGee is at 5.5, 6.8, 7.1 for his contract. Dallas is close to $15 million over the luxury tax. 14 players under contract. The Denver signings haven't become official except for their 2 first-round picks. Marvin Bagley, 12.5 across the board, 3 years, $37.5 million. Pretty good value contract for him. I thought he was an $8 to $10 million player. Maybe do 1 year and reestablish, but he's got $37.5 million based on a team that he was traded for, and we'll see how that plays out. He's still young enough to get another bite out of the apple if he plays well in Detroit. What else did we see in Detroit? We saw the Kemba trade. That was the only official signing in Detroit. Golden State. That Dante DiVincenzo contract has not been finalized. We will see there. They've got a bunch of 4 roster spots open, so we'll see. Jae'Sean Tate, 7, 6'5", team option of 7 in year 3, $500,000 per year in unlikely bonus. That's for games 1. They've got a little bit of a roster influx there, 18 players under contract, so they're eventually going to have to trim it down. Jalen Smith, 4.7, we had talked about it. That's the most he could have gotten because his 3rd year was declined by Phoenix, a team acquiring him in a trade, or the Suns could have only offered him more than the same amount as far as that 3rd year was declined. 4.7, 5.6, a team option, a player option in the last year. I believe it's at 5.4 for Jalen Smith. He can become a free agent in 2 years if he declines that option. Indiana is going to be interesting, guys, because we're waiting on that DeAndre Ayton situation to resolve. They moved back the guarantee date of Dwayne Washington to July 15th. Right now, the Indiana is at $26.4 million in cap space. DeAndre Ayton max is 30.9, so you've got a little bit of work to do. You can get there. We'll see maybe some of those players in that Boston trade with Brogdon that they're getting, the law firm of Fitz, Stauskas, and Morgan, are maybe rerouted to another team as part of that deal. That deal is not going to happen until July 9th because Morgan has he was signed later in the season. There's a trade restriction as far as when he can be traded, 3 months after he signed the contract here. So we'll see what happens with Ayton in Indiana. Certainly if Ayton signs that offer sheet, we'll see if you're Phoenix, you would think you would have to match it. 4 years, $140 million. We'll see. You'll have 2 days to decide, and when that happens, we'll probably do another video here. Clips, Batum, 10-8, 11-7, early bird exception, 2 years, right? Had to be for the minimum of 2 years. Amir Coffey, 3-4, 3-7, 3-9. Good deal for a player coming off a 2-way contract. Clips got 14 players under contract. The John Wall contract has not become official. That's going to be the tax mid-level, 6-5. For Mr. John Wall, Lakers, they're all minimum guys. I mean, Lonnie Walker gets the 6-5 tax, and then basically everyone else is. Damian Jones, here's when we talked about the minimum exception. So Damian Jones signed for the minimum, but they gave him a 2-year deal. So instead of getting that little bit of a tax break, Jones comes in at 2-3 and 2-5. You don't get relief for 1-8 there because it's a 2-year contract. Troy Brown, Thomas Bryant, Juan Toscano Anderson. I expect Max Christie to be signed for 2 years at the minimum exception. That is the max they can give him because they used their tax mid-level on Lonnie Walker here. So that's where we are with the Lakers. 13 players under contract, 2 ways. What's going to happen with Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook? I don't see a Westbrook for Irving swap happening, straight up. I think the only way that deal happens is if the Lakers incentivize Brooklyn, where there would be at least with a first-round pick, a pick swap, a second-round pick, maybe a second-round pick. I don't see Brooklyn just putting Seth Curry or Joe Harris in there as a salary filler. Those guys are good players. You're not just going to drop them in a salary dump to get rid of Kyrie. So I don't see a Westbrook for Irving swap happening unless other things, it's contingent on draft picks, which right now the Lakers have certainly kind of drawn a little bit of a line in the sand here. Let's see. Memphis, Tyus Jones, 15 and 14. He's got a bonus, $1 million bonus, 500 spread out over 2 years, 500 for Memphis winning the NBA championship. Kennedy Chandler, 1-2, 1-7, 2. Team option in 2-1. Basically, you put the team option in the 4th year because the player can become a restricted free agent if you decline that. Remember, we saw that with Jalen Brunson, who did not have that in his contract. Basically, if Memphis does not exercise that option or picks it up, then Chandler would become an unrestricted free agent. Miami is interesting based on what they did. Dwayne Dedmon, 4-7, 4-3, non-guaranteed. Caleb Martin, tax mid-level, 6'5", 6'8", 7'1". I'm expecting the Old Depot number to come in at 8.5 to 8.8 range. Basically, Miami right now is at $2 million below the luxury tax. You sign a player for 1.8, you will stay under here, and I'm expecting that's going to happen with the Heat. Joe Ingles, 6'4", 7'9", tax mid-level. Wes Matthews is at the minimum, 1.83. Javon Carter, 2.1, a little bit above the his number, which was at 4 years of service. He got non-bird exception. I think for Carter, it's interesting because, and not just pertaining to him, I think players get labeled as a minimum guy. We saw that with Carmelo Anthony for a while. Jeff Green is another guy. So he gets a little bit above that minimum there. And I think there's a little bit of a stigma as far as what we see with players here. So player option in year 2 at 2.2. Minnesota, nothing. We've talked about Taurean Prince before. In New Orleans. So we'll probably just do a whole another video on Zion Williamson when we finally see everything in his contract here. And I'm not going to go into it, but it's a full max contract. It's well known, I'm not breaking news here, that there's going to be there is injury protection language in there. David Griffin has been on the record saying that basically that it was going to happen. We'll see where it is, if it's close to that Joel Embiid number language, which was basically based on injury, games played. Does it get reduced down? Is it similar to maybe Jonathan Isaac? So we'll wait and see Zion before we kind of do another breakdown here, because the language right now is not clear. No player option, which is huge for New Orleans here, but full guaranteed contract, fully maxed contract. It's got protections in there. We'll talk about that down the road, right? We're not going to do it. We could probably do 20 minutes on Zion Williamson alone. New York, those guys have not become official. Lou Dort, 5 for 87. However, 82.5 is the base. Starts at 15.3. A team option in the last year at 17.7. He's got bonuses in there for all defense and defensive player of the year. Basically $1 million a year in bonuses. Total of 5. So that's where we're looking at Lou Dort. They've got a little bit of a roster crunch too. 17 players, not including second round pick Jalen Williams, Arkansas Jalen Williams. Orlando's been interesting. Their signings haven't become official, but we pegged them as a cap team. The likelihood is that they are an over the cap team and still have their mid-level exception because they've brought back Gary Harris and Mo Bamba. That's my expectation there. Philly, Tucker comes in at 10.49, and Daniel House is at 4.1. I'm just going to double check here because sometimes I draw like a blank. So PJ got the full non-tax mid-level. So right now, they are $36.2 million below the hard cap. So we'll see what happens with James Harden. I think it's going to be like 32 to 33, and then gives them a little bit of a buffer in case they got to go out and do a trade. Phoenix, all their guys were minimum players. Okogie, Biyombo, Damian Lee. We will wait and see what happens with DeAndre Ayton. Hey, listen, if Indiana gives them an offer sheet, you can't once Indiana gives them an offer sheet, if that happens, you cannot let him walk out the door for nothing. Because once you sign it, there's no trade to be had, right? You can't have a trade. And I think it'll be interesting as far as what the bells and whistles on a contract will be. I mean, it's just history. Like I'm not giving new knowledge here. It's just history as far as what happens. Maybe Phoenix just walks away and says, you know what, let him go sign somewhere else, whether it be Indiana or San Antonio, or maybe we can work out a sign and trade. But the last resort, if you're the Suns, is to let him walk for nothing, right? Like that would not be good. Portland, Simon's 4-year starts at 23.2, fully guaranteed. Nurkic is at 15.6. Gary Payton is at 8.3. Player option in the last year 3. They are, guys, $1.5 million under the tax. I'm expecting them to use the stretch provision on Eric Bledsoe. Spread out 1-3, 1-3, 1-3 over 3 years. That would basically give them a little bit of money to go out and sign Jabari Walker. Their second round pick, that would bring up to 14 players, and they would be able to stay on the tax. So good job there. Sacramento, the Herter trade happened. Malik Monk 9.4, 9.9. They have a little bit. They have a 101 left, a little over $1 million as far as their non-tax. They can go out and sign a player to a long 3 or 4 year contract. They have 12 players under contract. They're fine financially. San Antonio, they are sitting at $32 million in room. That includes Gallinari, who I'm expected to be waived. He's got a $13 million guaranteed. We'll see what they do with their cap situation there. Are they a player maybe for Russell Westbrook to take back money? We'll see. We talked about Thad Young, Otto Porter, 6 and 6'3", player option in year 2. The Raptors right now are $10 million below the luxury tax projected. Utah made the trade. That became official. The Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal. So I tweeted about Beal, unique, no trade clause, 15% trade kicker, which I really don't think matters much until the later end of the contract. Player option for year 5. He got the bells and whistles, man. No trade clause on that $250 million contract is huge for Beal. Basically, he controls, if he wants out, where his next destination is. So you lose a little bit of leverage there. And I think if you're from the Wizards' perspective, you probably think, well, we were going to work with Bradley Beal anyway. But it does kind of shrink the pool if he eventually did ask out 2 or 3 years down the road. it does shrink the pool because he could say, hey, these are the 5 or 6 teams I want to go to and work out a deal. Where with Durant, he doesn't have a no trade clause. He was not eligible to have a no trade clause. The rule is you have to be in the NBA for 8 years and 4 years of service with that team. So Beal was in the NBA 8 years, 4 years of service. It doesn't have to be consecutive years. Like we've seen LeBron have like multiple no trades with Cleveland. Like if Kevin Durant was traded to, let's say, Oklahoma City, and he was going to be a free agent next year, he would be able to negotiate a no trade clause because it's not it's a combination of the years. It's not in consecutive years, right? So that's where we are with Bradley Beal. I know the internet went crazy yesterday. I get it. I understand. I mean, trust me, if Beal wants out, there's a workable solution for down the road here. I'm not worried about that right now. DeLon Wright, 7-8 and 8-2 for him. The Wizards are $2.2 million below the luxury tax. They've got 14 players under contract, so they've got enough room to go out and sign another player. We'll see the next batch of contracts that come through. I don't really want to talk much about Durant. I mean, I guess we're kind of just in that holding pattern as far as figuring what, waiting for that perfect offer to come. Listen, I was on the other side of it in Brooklyn or New Jersey when we chased Carmelo, and that took 6 months. And Denver held out for the perfect package, and they got it. Do I think we're going to see the same thing? We potentially could be. I mean, that's just the reality, because if you're in Brooklyn, you cannot afford getting 80 cents on the dollar. You need 100, is there 100 cents? Is that even possible? 100 cents on the dollar here, the full dollar, not a nickel and a 3/4. So you have to wait out what you're waiting for, and if you got to go to training camp with both those guys, so be it. You manage damage control here, and I think the Ayton situation will be interesting. What happens? Does that trigger things, especially if Ayton goes somewhere else? That removes a trade asset, and basically Phoenix is left with Bridges, Crowder, Johnson, Landry, Shamet, that group, all their picks to offer in a deal. And is that good enough? What happens in Toronto? Scotty Barnes, Siakam, OG, Trent, all their picks, smattering of that, a poo-poo platter of that. Does New Orleans dip their toe in the deep end with Brandon Ingram? We'll see. That's what Summer League, everybody will converge in Vegas. I'm heading out there this afternoon, which is Thursday, and we'll go from there. So that was 22 minutes around the league as far as all the contracts, and have a terrific Thursday.